Sharon Tong. Welcome to In Parliament. The 9-day debate following the release of Budget 2013 wrapped up in Parliament today. Issues covered under the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth focused on building a Singapore that was not just a vibrant, successful city, but a home to the people living in the country. Questions about identity and belonging were raised, to which the ministry laid out its plans for building a better Singapore. Minister for Culture, Community and Youth Lawrence Wong said the government wants to engage Singaporeans in preserving and remembering their past. It will enhance the content in the country's national museums so that they can better tell the Singapore story. So over the next 5 years, $62 million will be pumped into the museums to build up collections and conserve them with new techniques. Online access to artifacts and artworks will also be increased. And to ensure every Singaporean gets to see them, there will be free entry to all national museums for Singaporeans and permanent residents from 18th May. The date coincides with International Museum Day.
Our museums are not just about objects and exhibitions. They are really about our people. And we want our museums to be central to the cultural and community life of all Singaporeans, enjoyed by young and old alike.
Surveys show only 1 in 5 Singaporeans visit museums today. In the long term, the ministry is planning to develop an island-wide network of community museums, galleries and heritage trails. There are 10 heritage trails, including those in the Civic District, Balestier and Queenstown today. 3 more will be launched this year in Toa Payoh, Tampines and Tiong Bahru.
We have to strike a balance between preservation and development. Our old buildings, structures and sites are part of our built heritage. They help preserve memories and contribute to the unique character of our living environment. So NHB will work closely with HDB, URA and other agencies to consider heritage elements in our development planning process. We want to make Singapore a modern city with deep roots.
Emphasising the importance of personal stories in bringing Singapore's heritage to life, Senior Parliamentary Secretary for Culture, Community and Youth Ministry, Sam Tan, says memories are created from diverse experiences and these can be shared through stories. One example of how this will be brought to life is through a new travelling exhibition that aims to remind Singaporeans of those who fought on the front lines during the SARS outbreak in Singapore. Mr. Tan said this will continue to promote awareness of these defining moments in Singapore's history, which have played a strong role in shaping our identity.
I urge the National Heritage Board to work with Singaporeans in this direction, not just to increase the visitorship to our museums, but to develop and inculcate a sense of ownership of our heritage. Heritage is not something that is detached and distant. Heritage is part of our everyday lives. It is not just history that we read or see, but it is in us and with us, evolving every day and in the process, changing us as well.
Our efforts to foster pride in the distinct heritage of different communities will also help to maintain bonds and held together by unique experiences. When NHB was creating the Kampong Glam Heritage Trail last year, these old neighbours came together to share their stories. A place close to the heart now also has a place in our shared history. By encouraging Singaporeans to come forward with their own stories, our approach to heritage celebrates not only those things that are common to us, but also those things which make us, each community, a very unique one.
Arts will be made available to all through the rollout of the Arts and Culture Education Master Plan last year. This master plan strengthens arts education in schools by giving teachers more access to training in the teaching of the arts.
Through these efforts, we want to make sure that every child in school can regularly take part in different cultural activities and learn to express themselves through storytelling, arts and crafts, singing, music making and dance. We also want them to have the opportunity to appreciate artistic excellence and be inspired through visits to the museum, theatre, concert hall or heritage sites.
Funding to local artists and arts groups will also increase by almost $94 million over the next 5 years. This is an increase of almost 140% compared to the 5 years ending 2011. Mr. Wong said with the additional increase, artists will have greater support to pursue their passion.
Unlike our national companies, the SSO and SCO, who together receive about 13 million in government grants alone in 2011, these groups receive substantially less government funding as a proportion of their total operating budget. In fact, in 2011, 28 of our top-funded arts groups received just over 5 million in total. Most of these groups are being funded at only 5 to 20% of their total operating costs. This puts a tremendous strain on them to rely on box office income and uncertain sponsorship revenue to cover the remaining 80% of their annual expenditures.
There are some perceptions that state funding for artistic excellence has been compromised somewhat because of funding for community engagement in the arts. And I would like to clarify that, in fact, the government support for artists and art groups has actually increased significantly over the years.
But Mr. Wong said the National Arts Council will apply funding guidelines with a light touch to enable artists to express themselves freely.
The key does not lie in funding guidelines per se, but the key lies in building a discerning audience that is supportive of artistic expression, even if it may be sometimes provocative or controversial. And that requires deep dialogue and engagement between our artists and the broader community, different diverse groups, which MCCY and NAC will facilitate so that we can gradually open up the space for more artistic expressions.
But funding cannot just come from the government, says Mr. Wong, and there needs to be the right balance between government support for the arts and heritage and support from corporations and individuals.
Over the last 5 years, while the number of arts organizations has increased, total private giving to the arts has remained more or less unchanged at only about 3% of all charitable donations. And compared to other countries, we still have some way to go. Because if you look on a per capita basis, giving to the cultural sector in Singapore stands at about $7 per person, compared to $13 in Australia, $14 in the UK, and $35 in the US.
The government will also establish a $5 million Harmony Fund to replace the existing Community Heritage Grant Scheme, which supports various ethnic events. The new fund aims to support ground-up initiatives for creating a strong, vibrant and more colourful society. With this new fund, Senior Parliamentary Secretary for the Culture, Community and Youth Ministry, Sam Tan, said he hopes more groups will come forward to share new and creative ideas. He added that this will also allow all Singaporeans to gain a greater understanding and appreciation of racial and religious diversity.
Non-profit organizations will be able to apply for co-funding from the Harmony Fund to undertake worthy projects. So this could be projects that raise awareness of the importance of racial and religious tolerance, promote knowledge and appreciations of different cultural practices, to encourage interactions between different racial or religious groups, or reduce negative stereotypes or misconceptions about other communities.
And as part of the government's efforts to engage the community, the ministry will continue to support the development of traditional arts groups. Programs will focus on the group's organizational development, the passing on of traditional art forms to the next generation, and finally engaging a wider Singaporean audience. The National Arts Council supported 60 traditional arts groups last year.
Our support for traditional arts and heritage recognizes these links to our past as living things, which evolve and strengthen as the different cultures within our shores share their practices. So they add colors to Singapore's story, and they can form part of the cultural ballast. Equally important, shared appreciation for traditional arts can form bridges across our diverse community.
Sports is also another way of improving the quality of life of Singaporeans and making the country a better one. The government wants to promote a sporting lifestyle among Singaporeans. Mr. Lawrence Wong said funding in sports programming is also set to increase by more than $250 million over the next 5 years. He said the government's investment in infrastructure will also double. The increase will be allocated largely to operating a wider network of upgraded sports facilities and in building a strong sports culture. But Mr. Wong said building a strong sports culture requires the efforts of many partners, most importantly with the National Sports Associations or NSAs. He said NSAs play a critical role in promoting a sporting culture and excellence. And while the Singapore Sports Council provides annual funding and indirect assistance, resources continue to be a concern.
I've asked SSC to look at the funding framework and to work with the NSAs to see how we can better manage and optimize our resources. I think part of this also includes looking at manpower needs, a point that Mr. Nicholas Fang mentioned, and he also asked about this in the PQ earlier on the sports administration. And so we will look at it holistically, funding as well as manpower requirements in the broader context of the sports sector, and see how we can better support our NSAs.
And a super sports club concept will be developed to offer Singaporeans more opportunities to sustain their interest and participation in sports. It will be a platform that pulls together existing providers, sports interest groups and sports clubs within the area. The Sports Council will work with them as well as with schools in the area. A pilot will be launched in Singapore's western region this year. Mr. Wong noted that currently, though there are many organisations offering sporting programs, their efforts tend to be standalone and not well integrated. He said that the Singapore Sports Council has been working on the possible operating models for the Super Sports Club as well as the details of the programs to be implemented.
For example, if there are people interested in playing basketball, the Super Sports Club in the region will bring them together, offer basketball clinics and lessons conducted by professional instructors for different levels of play, and organize competitions and leagues so that everyone can find teams to play with and events to hone their sporting skills. By linking up with the schools, the Super Sports Club can provide additional avenues for students to play games like basketball or other sports that they are interested in.
Mr. Wong added that the ministry's experience from the pilot will be used to fine-tune and strengthen the concept before progressively expanding the programs to other regions. The new regional sports centres, once they are developed, will serve as the anchor for the super sports clubs. Now, sports and recreational facilities will also be made more accessible. By 2030, there will be 5 regional sports centres across the island. Mr. Wong said the RSEs, or regional sports centres, will be bigger and better than existing sports and recreation centres. They will serve as main focal points for sport competitions, leagues and events. They will also be designed with better facilities, including higher seating capacity in the stadiums and LED screens to enhance spectator experience.
Besides the facility itself, the Regional Sports Centre will also have other complementary lifestyle and recreational amenities. So wherever possible, they will be co-located with other community facilities and conveniently located near transport nodes and town hubs to offer seamless access and a new experience, not just for the individual, but for the whole family.
And amid calls to boost excellence in sports, a new Sports Excellence or SPECS scholarship will support an elite group of top athletes with living allowances starting this year. $40 million will be set aside for this in the next 5 years. It will support some 60 national athletes in various sports. All athletes, including the disabled, are eligible. The scholarship is part of a new high-performance system, or HPS, that is expected to provide more comprehensive support for national athletes.
More needs to be done to support our already small pool of sporting talent, and I mean a lot more. Are there plans to provide more financial support so that our athletes of all ages can train full-time in good facilities and with good coaching support? Can more be done in terms of technical, physiological, medical and psychological support so that our athletes can compete with the best in the world?
Those who are not under the scholarship will still get support through the HPS. So the scholarship is just one part of it, but there's a broader range of support that the HPS will offer, and that includes coaching, sports medicine, sports science, and training allowance. We will also look at collaborations with overseas teams and sports organizations to enable our athletes to gain experiences through competitions and exchanges. So overall, we expect the HPS to benefit more than 1,000 national athletes annually.
Now, the youth is also another focus of the government. It will inject $72 million to the National Youth Endowment Fund, bringing the total amount to $100 million. Mr. Wong said this top-up is in a bid to support more ground-up initiatives. Mr. Wong said the fund, which currently stands at $28 million, has seen an increase in grant amounts given out over the years. The fund benefited 15 projects last year. At its current pace, existing funding from the fund's investment income will be fully allocated by 2015. Mr. Wong also added that instead of keeping it as an endowment fund, the $100 million will be converted into a national youth fund. This means that instead of only a small investment income that can be utilized annually, the fund will now be drawn down every year. With these changes, the fund can be expected to provide an annual budget of about $5 million, or more than 8 times the current annual funding.
The additional funding from the NYF will give a boost to our youth as they go out to champion community and social causes. Whether it's setting up a social enterprise or kickstarting a new social initiative, the National Youth Fund will provide our youth with the resources and support they need. And over time, through the National Youth Fund and through the efforts of the NYC and its partners, I'm confident we can imbue in our youth a strong culture of volunteerism and social participation.
Issues concerning the Malay-Muslim community were also covered in this debate. Minister in charge of Muslim Affairs, Dr. Yaacob Ibrahim, said the story of the Singapore Malay-Muslim community is a mix of pain and joy, with stories of failure as well as success. But he says he hopes to paint the picture of the community as one filled with hope, opportunities and challenges that they have fought wholeheartedly together to overcome. He said many have been able to progress within the Singapore system of multiracialism and meritocracy.
Allowing a misplaced narrative of hopelessness perpetuates the very stereotype that we have worked hard over many decades to dispel. We must not be our worst enemy by getting trapped into a negative, self-fulfilling prophecy. It is a whole new world out there with many, many opportunities. If we continue to be preoccupied with what could have been, we miss out on what can be. I took his message to heart. This is the crux of where we are today.
Dr. Yaacob also pledged to continue providing assistance for those who need it. For students who want a second chance in obtaining educational qualifications such as N, O or A levels, Mendaki will launch a SENS College in Tampines. It's a skills centre for learning and upgrading. Needy families will also be getting a leg up.
I'm pleased to announce that Mendaki at the Heartlands will be set up in Pasir Ris and Woodlands. These satellite centres will help needy families gain access to a broad range of social services near their homes. I encourage the centre's clients to be open and forthcoming about their circumstances and concern so that the right solutions can be found for them.
Rounding up the debate, Leader of the House, Ng Eng Hen, urged MPs to start work and ensure policies are implemented correctly, and if not, to speak up. Dr. Ng said extensive debates from social spending to economic restructuring show the nation is paying more attention inwardly.
Appropriately making sharp adjustments to catch up with infrastructure needs and rising costs of living, but also preparing ahead for a slowing economy and an aging population. If in the past our country was like that of a young man springing along with boundless energy, Singapore is now moving at a much more measured pace, a mature adult conscious of his or her limitations. Singapore has moved into a new and uncharted phase.
Dr. Ng also highlighted several firsts during this debate. It was the first budget for the newly created Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth. Also a first for the Speaker of the House, Madam Halimah Yaacob. Over 9 days of debate, members filed close to 500 amendments, a 7% increase from last year. Dr. Ng said the quality and civility of the debate spoke well of the legislature.
But the art of the succinct can be honed. Compress our speeches for greater impact.
Echoing Dr. Ng's call for brevity, Speaker of Parliament Halimah Yacob described the exchanges as robust and engaging and said that policymakers had shown a strong desire to involve Singaporeans more in shaping their own destiny. Noting that the focus of this year's budget was on the elderly, low-income Singaporeans and the young, she added that palpable policy shifts were announced in many areas. Madam Halimah wrapped up her speech with some advice to members of the House for next year's budget debate.
Most members kept to the allotted times, although some really stretched the limit. Some have also refined their speed reading techniques. My advice for next year is to plan your speech better. Brevity is not a sin. After all, the two most powerful words in the human vocabulary are very short: yes and no. I would also like to remind members to use audiovisual aids only as illustrations of some points in your speech, not to replace it, as the public wants to hear you and not to watch a video. Some have also commiserated with me because I could not speak. Yes, indeed, it was rather strange to be listening to you rather than to be with you to argue my points or to explain policies, but I have enjoyed presiding over this debate.
And Parliament also passed a bill that would allow the Monetary Authority of Singapore to, among other things, extend the principal objects of its MAS Act and extend its resolution powers to include other financial institutions in distress, apart from banks and insurance companies. Moving the bill in Parliament today, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam said the bill would extend MAS's resolution powers to institutions such as finance companies, merchant banks and approved clearing houses. The bill will also allow for changes in updating a regulatory framework for MAS's issuance of securities, as well as housekeeping changes to better administer the Act. Mr. Shanmugam said MAS consulted the public and the industry on these changes. Nominated Member of Parliament Tan Su Shan, who is a banker by trade, welcomed these changes, saying the enhancements are timely, but she voiced some concerns.
With the general trend now towards encouraging trades to be centrally cleared by a central clearinghouse, it is the industry view that the failure of such clearinghouses would pose a major systemic risk. Hence, the resolution regime may need to be enhanced to ensure that such risks are mitigated, for example, through clear segregation of clients' monies. The suggestion is that the resolution powers should be consistent with the loss allocation mechanisms that apply now under the clearing rules in the event of a member company's default, and they should not be exercised in a manner that increases the loss suffered by non-defaulting members.
As part of prudent risk management, clearinghouses are expected by the MAS to put in place loss allocation mechanisms to manage a member's default. MAS will certainly take into account these loss allocation mechanisms and their impact on members and their clients in determining an appropriate resolution strategy for a failing clearinghouse. We will be guided by the need to minimize costs to taxpayers and to consumers of financial services, as well as the need to avoid major disruption to financial markets.
Parliament also passed amendments to the Financial Institutions Bill and Insurance Bill. It also introduced a new bill today to amend the Child Development Co-Savings Act to make changes to the maternity and childcare benefits of female employees. And Parliament has adjourned. Good night.